principles and regulations emanating from a government and applicable to a people, whether in the form of legislation or of custom, and policies recognized and enforced by judicial decisions. Any written or positive rule, or collection of rules, prescribed under the authority of the state or nation. The American College Dictionary, edited by C. L. Barnhart, 1966. A divine commandment or revelation of the will of God, the whole body of God's commandments or revelations, the will of God, a rule of right living or good conduct, especially when conceived as having sanction of God's will, of conscience or the moral nature or of natural disaster. Webster's third New International Dictionary, 1981. The word law in the Hebrew scriptures is translated primarily from the Hebrew word Torah, related to the verb yara, meaning direct, teach, instruct. In some cases, it is translated from the Aramaic term dath. Daniel 6:5, verse 8 and 15 also. Other words translated in the King James Version as law are mispat, judicial decision, judgment, and mitzvah, commandment. In the Greek scriptures, the word nomos, from the verb nemo, deal out, distribute, is translated law. Jehovah God is designated as the source of law, the supreme lawgiver, Isaiah 33:22, the sovereign delegated authority, Psalm 73:28, Jeremiah 50:25, Luke 2:29, Acts 4:24, Revelation 6:10, without whose permission or allowance no authority can be exercised, Romans 13:1, Daniel 4:35, Acts 17:24 to 31. His throne is established on righteousness and judgment, Psalm 97:1 and 2. The stated will of God becomes law to his creatures. See legal case. Laws to angels. Angels higher than man are subjected to the law and commandment of God. Hebrews 1:7 and 14, Psalms 104:4. Jehovah even commanded and restricted his adversary, Satan. Job 1:12 and 2 verse 6. Michael the archangel recognized and respected Jehovah's position as supreme judge when he said, "In dispute with the devil, may Jehovah rebuke you." Jude 9. Compare Zechariah 3 and 2. The glorified Jesus Christ has all the angels placed under his authority by Jehovah God. Hebrews 1:6, 1 Peter 3:22, Matthew 13:41, chapter 25 verse 31, Philippians 2:9 through 11. Thus, by Jesus' command, an angelic messenger was sent to John. Revelation 1:1. Yet at 1 Corinthians 6:3, the Apostle Paul speaks of the spiritual brothers of Christ as designated to judge angels, evidently because they are to share in some way in executing judgment upon wicked spirits. Law of divine creation. One of the definitions of law given in Webster's third New International Dictionary is the observed regularity of nature. As creator of all things in heaven and earth, Acts 4:24, Revelation 4:11, Jehovah has established laws governing all created things. Job 38:10 speaks of a regulation on the sea. Job 38:12, or commanding the morn, and Job 38 verse 31 to 33 calls attention to star constellations and to the statues of the heavens. The same chapter points to God as governing the light, snow, hail, clouds, rain, dew, and lightning. Continue to chapters 39 through 41. God's care for the animal kingdom is shown, and the birth, life cycles, and habits of animals are attributed to regulations laid down by God, not to any evolutionary adaptation. In fact, in the very creating of life forms, God incorporated the law that each was to bring forth according to its kind, making evolution impossible. Genesis 1:11, 12, 21, 24, 25. Man also brought forth sons in his likeness, in his image. Genesis 5:3. At Psalm 139, 13 through 16, the embryonic growth of a child in the womb is spoken of, its parts being written down in Jehovah's book before any of them actually existed. Job 26:7 describes Jehovah as hanging the earth upon nothing. Scientists today attribute the Earth's position in space primarily to the interaction of the law of gravity and the law of centrifugal force. Law to Adam. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were commanded by God concerning their duties. First, to fulfill earth, second, to subdue it, and third, to have in subjection all living creatures of earth, sea, and air. Genesis 1:28. They were given laws as to their diet, granting them the seed-bearing vegetation and fruit of food. Genesis 1:29, chapters 2, verse 16. However, Adam was given a command that prohibited eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. Genesis 2:17. This command was transmitted to Eve. Genesis 3:2 and 3. Adam is referred to as a transgressor and a trespasser because he violated a stated law. Romans 5:14 and verse 17, chapter 4, verse 15. Laws to Noah. Patriarchal law. Noah was given commandments relative to the building of the ark and the saving of his family. Genesis 6:22. After the flood, he was given laws that commanded the adding of flesh to man's diet, declaring the sacredness of life and therefore of blood, in which is the life, prohibiting the eating of blood, condemned the murder, and instituted capital punishment for his crime. Genesis 9:3 through 6. The patriarch was a family head and ruler. Jehovah is designated as the great family head, or patriarch, the father to whom every family in heaven and on earth owes its name. Ephesians 3:14 and 15. Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are outstanding examples of patriarchs. These were especially dealt with by Jehovah. Abraham was given the command to circumcise all males of his household as a sign of God's covenant with him. Genesis 17:11 and 12. He observed Jehovah's commands, statutes, and laws. He knew Jehovah's way to do righteousness and judgment, and he laid these commands on his household. Genesis 26:4, 5, chapters 18 and 19, verse 19. The laws that govern the patriarchs were also generally understood and partially reflected in the laws of the nations at the time, all of which nations sprang from the three sons of Noah. The patriarch, for example, the Pharaoh of Egypt, knew that it was wrong to take another man's wife. Genesis 12:14 through 20. As did the kings of Philistines in the cases of Sarah and Rebekah. Genesis 20:2 through 6, chapters 26, 7 through 11. In the days of Moses, the Israelites were in slavery to Egypt. They had voluntarily gone into Egypt during Jacob's lifetime, but were enslaved after Jacob's son. The prime minister Joseph had died, so in effect they were sold into slavery for nothing. Jehovah, in harmony with the patriarchal law of redemption and of the priority of the firstborn son, told Pharaoh by mouth of Moses and Aaron, Israel is my son, my firstborn, and I say to you, send my son away, that he may serve me. But should you refuse to send him away, here I am killing your son, your firstborn. Exodus 4:22-23. No redemption price was necessary for this release, nor was any given to Egypt. And when Israelites left their slave masters, the Egyptians, Jehovah gave the people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, so that these granted them what was asked, and they stripped the Egyptians. Exodus 3:21, chapters 12, verse 36. They had entered the land with the approval of the Pharaoh, not as captives of war to be enslaved, but as free people. The enslavement had been unjust, so evidently Jehovah was seeing to it that they were now given images, uh, given wages for their labor. The family was held responsible for violations of law by individual members. The patriarchal head was the responsible representative. He was blamed for wrongs of his family and was required to punish individual wrongdoers in the family. Genesis 31, 30 to 33. 2. Marriage and birthright. Parents govern the arrangement of marriage for their sons and daughters. Genesis 24, 1 through 4. The paying of a bride price was common. Among the worshippers of Jehovah, intermarriage with idolaters was disobedience and was against the interest of the family. Genesis 26:34, verse 35. Chapters 27, verse 46. Chapter 28, 1 and 6 through 9. The birth was reserved for the firstborn, belonging to him by inheritance. This included receiving a double portion of the estate. However, it could be transferred by the family head, the father. Genesis 4:22, 1 Chronicles 5:1. The oldest son normally became the patriarchal head when the father died. Sons after marriage could establish households separate from the father's headship and could themselves become family heads. Morals. Fornication was disgraceful and punishable, especially in cases of engaged persons or married persons, adultery. Genesis 38:24 to 26, chapters 34 and 7. Brother-in-law marriage was practiced when a man died without a son. His brother then had the responsibility to take the widow as his wife, and the firstborn of their union would inherit the dead man's estate and carry on his name. Deuteronomy 25, 5 and 6, Genesis 38, 6 through 26. Property. Generally, there seems to have been no holding of individual property. Aside from a few personal belongings, all herds, household goods, and equipment were held in common by the family. Genesis 31, 14 to 16. On the basis of related historical evidence, some scholars believe that in transferring land, the buyer was shown the land from a vantage point, the exact boundaries being designed when the buyer said, "I see." He indicated legal acceptance. When Jehovah gave Abraham the promise of receiving the land of Canaan, Abraham was first told to look into all four directions. Abraham did not say, "I see," perhaps because God said that he would give the promised land to Abraham's seed. Later on, Genesis 13, verse 14 and 15, Moses, as the legal representative of Israel, was told to see the land, which, in the view just discussed, is correct, would indicate legal transfer of the land to Israel for them to take it under Joshua's leadership. Deuteronomy 3:28, 27, 28, chapters 34, 4. Consider also Satan's offer to Jesus at Matthew 4:8. Another action appearing to have similar legal flavor was walking across the land or entering it for the purpose of taking possession. Genesis 13 and 17, 28 and 13. In certain ancient documents, the number of trees on a piece of land was listed at each real estate sale. Compare Genesis 23:17 and 18.